Hey, good morning. Happy full moon for anybody who's observing that today. Uh, Today, I am kind of meditating on how to incorporate one of our rituals into these videos without making one more about the other. Um, so, Today is the full moon. It is a day where we worship and pray for the healing of the divine feminine in all beings in the whole universe. So it's a very special day for us. Um, and it was just my birthday, which is why I took the past couple days off. But I made a post about my birthday in which I brought up the concept of offerings and making offerings. And I wanted to make today's video about the importance of kind of giving of ourselves and receiving into ourselves in the space of ritual. I think many of us, especially in the West, have this very specific framework on where spirituality lives. Right? Spirituality lives in a specific building. We go there at a specific time. There is a service. We're done with it. We go home. We go back to our normal lives. For me and the way that we practice our spirituality, it is everywhere, and it is kind of a never-ending stream of sacredness. Right, we're trying to bring the sacred into our lives as much as is possible. And so, as a result, we are kind of constantly in this relating to spirit. Um, and there's a couple of different ways to kind of think about that. It's not for everybody, and I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Everybody needs to kind of relate to these concepts how it feels best for them. For us, given kind of the choices we're making and becoming, kind of clergy on some level, that's our relationship to spirit. And so I want to first kind of talk about this concept of offerings, because I think this is one of those really easy places to get caught in, kind of challenges around spirituality and kind of like, okay, what are you talking about now? Um, and so I wanna be really clear about the various levels that we can engage with. So the first and foremost, kind of the first aspect of offerings that I think are important for us to kind of bring into our awareness is that they're just a manifested form of gratitude. So all offerings start inside and work their way outside. If I have nothing to give, gratitude is enough. If I have nothing to give, some conscious breaths, some engagement with saying thank you, some aspect of bringing the feelings of gratitude from my inside being to my outside being is really all that needs to be done, right? Quote unquote, needs. And as we are moving through our work together, we're, for many of us, taking this practice of gratitude further and further as we go. And some offering practices can get really, really intense. One of the offerings that I mentioned on my birthday run, was just um, the sweat of my effort given back to the earth was in and of itself meant to be an offering to show my commitment to the work, meant to show my kind of continued gratitude as reified by the actions. And that's really important to me. because I think what offerings do is they take something that can be perceived as intangible and then make it tangible. While I was running, in addition to the sweat and the effort and the steps of my feet along the ground, I also had with me, a pretty sizable bag of herbs, from, kind of various uh, shops and whatnot. Some of them I had gotten from friends, some of them I had gotten from a shop. But each of them was selected to have a specific connotation. The connotation was just as much for me as it was for the offering themselves, right? Again, it's more about the sincerity of the offering than it is anything else. But for me, they were specifically tied to an intention of mine, to be caught up in the end of my 34 to 35 and the beginning of my 35 to 36, and wanting very much the offerings that I was making to be tied to the intentions I was having. Because I'm giving of myself, I'm also giving to the ritual. And so, keeping in mind very much the intention of the ritual, and having the offering itself kind of be linked in some way, that I'll use the word sympathetic magic, can begin to work itself into our actions. The idea of offerings is actually kind of interesting, and brings us into, I think, potentially a kind of a fun conversation about how our folk history is kind of caught up in this concept of offerings. In making whiskey in particular, but any spirits, any potions, any alchemical practice or process, something's always lost in the work. So, making spirits in particular, they have this phrase: "The angel's share and the devil's cut," implying that, so that which evaporates goes up, and that's pure, and it goes, it's the angel's share. That which kind of gets left at the bottom of the barrel, the dredges at the bottom of the process, is kind of not inconsumable, and so is given back to the earth, and that's what's called the devil's cut. And when you're planning any process, you have to plan on what you're going to lose in the process, right? Because nothing is a pure one-to-one value. The process itself usually causes something to be lost. And so, in that way, for us as humans in trying to engage in spirituality in a way which is ethical and moral and all of that, we recognize that we're asking for something, and so we should be giving something back. We recognize that something is already going to be lost, and so we try to engage with that process of losing, right? Kind of giving of ourselves in order to receive unto ourselves something. Not giving from like, fine, but like, here, take this. Thank you so much for engaging with me. And this kind of brings us into a fun jump in where ritual goes from purely a psychological act, purely an act of, I have an intention, I'm going to use this opportunity to reify it through action, and then kind of brings us into this new framework of relationship, right? If I'm going to give something to the ritual and hope to receive something from the ritual, then there's this reciprocal value, this reciprocal relationship kind of being birthed at this point. And that for me is really, really important. It's important for a lot of reasons. My spirituality and the way my spirituality takes form includes something that I think is best framed up around the idea of bioregional animism. Look it up. But the idea there is that, effectively said simply, nature is alive, and it is the system that we live in, and we all live within a specific bioregional framework. We all live within a place and a space. So I live in the Merrimack Valley area. And so we can say around the river springs up an ecosystem. That ecosystem is a living system that has give and take. And so what is being offered in this concept here is, I think, a reminder that we're always trying to give and receive in sustainable amounts, right? If my spiritual practice is only about taking, I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more. And it's never about the giving, the offering, the letting go, the knowing that this is not just about me, but the system I am intrinsically linked to. Then I think we rip ourselves out of nature, and we start to live in not just a transactional relationship, which offerings can develop, and I'm going to talk about that later, but we start to live in just a purely exploitive relationship to nature, a purely what can I get from you? And that, I think, goes beyond transactional and becomes kind of where our imperialistic, our colonial frameworks kind of can find themselves finding root in our spiritual practice. And so, again, because we can't take more than what is sustainable for the environment, we have to always be willing to give back to it. Maybe not in exact proportion, but a percentage, right? We have to be willing to give back to the ecosystem in an effective way. And it's more, again, from us. It has to be about a sincere, if all I have today is just gratitude, can that just be enough? If all I have today is just the sweat of my effort, is that enough? I say yes. Which brings me into, because we're bringing ourselves into an awareness of ecosystems, making offerings that are safe, not just leaving, fruit by the side of a road to potentially, cause an animal to be struck by a car, not, kind of not giving offerings in a way which will do undue harm to the ecosystem, making sure that that which we're giving back is being received in a safe way. That's an extremely important aspect that I don't think really gets talked about as much as maybe I believe it should be. Bringing about the awareness of how to enrich the environment without kind of endangering anything or anyone. Making sure that we're leaving things that are biodegradable and safe for the ground itself, the sky, whatever it is that we're offering to. So, and that leads me to kind of an important, piece of getting to know the ecosystem that you're in, right? So if you're going to be engaging with it in a safe way, that means you have to have some understanding of it. It means you have to have some understanding of the flora, the fauna, and the ecosystem itself. So the flip side of this, and I mentioned it earlier, right, is that while I believe in these sincere, grateful offerings, I mentioned the idea that this can, I mentioned the idea that we can really engage in this in a very transactional way, right? I gave you this, so now you give me this, and I deserve it, so do it now. Um, this framework, this transactional framework, I bought it, so give it to me sort of thing. Again, I think leads us down a tricky road with regard to our own spiritual process. Just in the same way that take is going to have some upsides and some downsides to it. This I bought it, so give it to me framework is going to have some tricky relationships to our own spiritual growth. So while each one of them likely will be a phase we move through in our relationship to ritual, my hope is that we never get stuck on one or never only hold one as our viewpoint for a long time. So moving beyond this idea of transactionality, we move into this place of genuine relationship, reciprocal relationship, right? I'm not giving this to you because I paid for it. I'm giving this to you because I'm grateful and I want you to feel appreciated and I want to feel appreciated and I want us to be in reciprocal relationship built around respect, built around respect. We understand that everything is thermodynamic interaction. We recognize that everything is giving and receiving and taking and leaving, losing, whatever it is. We're all here for a limited period of time, right? We're all here engaging in these relationships as long as we can. And so as a result, we're never trying to hold anything in this covetous sort of way. And I think that's an important piece in order for us to be able to then move into kind of deeper and deeper relationships with ritual. So for those of us who have already kind of, integrated these aspects of it, which is, the first level of ritual is just, I have an internal intention. I want to make it an external action reified through ritual, an acting out of intention over time, moving into this space of offering sincere gratitude from my being out into the ritual space, entering into relationship, which we inherently understand is reciprocal. So we want to give something of ourselves so that we can receive something unto ourselves. And then moving past the transactional understanding of relationship into reciprocal, respectful interactions of energies. All of that is great. At a certain point, the question is going to creep in, and I'm sure it's creeped in already to anybody who's listening to this video. Who are you making offerings to? What's happening now? What are you talking about? And this is where the conversation about spirit inevitably comes to the forefront. Who am I making offerings to? What am I making offerings to? What's this, what's this relationship to? It's a complex question with no simple answer. It's an answer that you have to be willing to sit with uncertainty around, and it's a question that you have to be willing to embrace the fact that you're going to have a relationship with the question and the answer that evolves as you evolve. It won't be a straight line. You won't just say, like, today it means nothing to me, tomorrow it'll mean everything to me. Eventually, it might mean nothing again, right? These things will come and go very fluidly. Today, what's true might not be true tomorrow. So we have to kind of let go of the hard lines and definitions in order to welcome some of these understandings into our life. So that's my disclaimer right at the beginning. I mentioned on one side the bioregional animism piece. And this can be understood, from the Tao Te Ching as the 10,000 things. is this concept that everything is alive and I can be in relationship to everything. This is one side. The other side, my teacher used to always say, there's only one relationship, you and the universe. You are just a manifestation of source. You are in relationship to source only. And everything else is just a manifestation of that one thing. Right? So either it's just the one thing or it's all the things. Right? Either we're talking about the transcendent conception of the Godhead or source or whatever it is that we want to kind of put as the singularity there, or we're in relationship to all the manifestations of the singularity as aspects and manifestations of the divine. Both are fine, neither matter, right? They're just concepts and conceptions for us to be able to relate down to. Because everything is a manifestation of the divine. If I make an offering to something, whether that's just herbs on a trail, the idea is it's just the one thing, right? I know it's all of these little things down here, but it's also just the one thing over there. If I make offerings of prayer and song and gratitude and joyful dance to the one singularity and source, then I'm actually making offerings and reifying my relationship with all things and the interconnectedness, the interconnected nature, the unified nature of all things. So in this way, we can kind of let go of some of the hard lines around what are we making offerings to? Whatever you want to, whatever you say you are. Am I just leaving some things in the woods so that they can return back to the ecosystem and additional nutrients can return back to the soil? Maybe. Am I leaving the essence of the thing itself so that it can be reabsorbed into the spiritual essence of the universe and I can bear, into my life the fruit of that offering? Maybe, sure, that too. And so again, we can see why when we have more nuanced understandings of the relationship to offering in ritual, we arrive at more and more complexity and less certainty. It's more about what's your relationship to it and what's my relationship to it, and can those relationships to the thing kind of help one another to grow in complexity and grow in our scale and scope of understanding. Maybe one of the best ways to understand it is, I was listening to, a biologist talk about a flower versus somebody who's talking about a flower from purely like a simple understanding. It's maybe an unexamined understanding of the flower. The biologist's understanding of the flower and all of its deep mechanisms of how, and maybe the unexamined biological frameworks of what allows for that other person to understand maybe spiritually why. What and why are not opposed to each other, but ideally, as practitioners of this path, we're always looking to include more understanding into our knowledge of the thing itself, right? So I don't look at somebody who is a monotheist and say you're wrong, and someone who is a panentheist or a polytheist as wrong. I say you both have unique understandings. How can both of your understandings influence my understanding? I think it's a deeply important series of questions for us to ask around these very complex topics. The the final piece I want to bring in here, I've given a lot of information about how to understand offerings and all of that, and how to maybe bring offerings into your own practice. But now I want to bring over how to receive, how to allow ourselves to receive. The phrase that stands out most in my mind that we use in our practice came from Biz around a ritual that they kind of facilitated for me. And these three phases that have lots of different words in different traditions and whatnot, but I thought that this was like one of the best ways to put it. Arrive, receive, surrender. Arrive, receive, surrender. This idea that once we've done all the preparation, once we've done all the work, when we show up to the space of ritual, we have arrived at the beginning, right? So we've entered into the space. This is, for me, this is the time when we would be making the offerings, is around this concept of arriving, making sure everything's ready, preparing myself, the space, and everything else for ritual to begin to occur. Receive, right? So receive in the concept or in the context of ritual has this concept of once I've arrived, the ritual is already occurring. And so everything that's happening in that space is I'm just receiving messages, energies, movements, feelings inside my body space, inside the ritual space, whatever it is. Again, I think I've brought this up a little bit, but the body is effectively an antenna, right? The spine can be perceived as like the antenna of a television kind of receiving a signal. If I've arrived properly and I allow myself to receive and stay in this very receptive nature, right? It's not an active process. It's actually a very kind of silent process. It's a process of stillness, receiving unto myself. And then surrendering over to it, right? Whatever I receive, allowing that to be what it is. Whatever I receive, allowing that to be my truth. And that for me is really difficult for a lot of folks. I think that's really where a lot of us get tripped up, right? The word resistance gets thrown out there quite a bit. Resistance is a great word because it has a physical understanding, right? So resistance and grounding are both words with relationship to electricity and energy. When an electrical current gets resistance, it creates heat. And too much heat creates fire. And fire is in and of itself sometimes a destructive but necessary process. And so one of the phrases I received, fire goes where the fuel is. If I resist the current of energy that I'm receiving, right, then I will create friction and I won't be able to fully embrace the empowerment of it. If I surrender to it and I let go of all resistance and I allow the current of energy to move through me fully, into me fully, and to fully allow myself to take it into my being, there's no friction, right? There's no resistance. There's just being with what is. Being with what is. Arrive, receive, surrender. Gratitude in all moments. The offerings are merely just the enacting of that gratitude, the physical reminder of that gratitude. and potentially, hopefully, a way to return back some of that gratitude to the system that we're inevitably going to remove value from for ourselves. And so, in this way, we embrace that we have to get something for ourselves from ritual, or else it's just this kind of cyclical looping. We have to give something in ritual, or else it's just take, hubristic sort of work. So neither self annihilation or self aggrandizement. Relationship, reciprocal always. Arrive, receive, surrender. I arrive, I prepare the space, I receive what there is to receive, and I surrender to its power so that it may change me, so that I might take it into myself all the deeper and be changed in the process of engaging. So, as we embrace the full moon tonight, we will make offerings, we will prepare the space, we will arrive with the power of the moon, we will receive the energy of healing the divine feminine in ourselves and in all beings in the universe. We will surrender to it and likely be pushed in our surrendering to grow in more inclusive and more maybe an ever deepening sort of way around our relationship to the divine feminine, to the moon, to ourselves, to all beings, to the universe. Because as I said, the 10,000 things and the one thing is no difference. There's no separation. It's all the same. All one web of interacting, interrelating, interconnected, interdependent things. And so I wish you all a very blessed full moon. I wish you all a very beautiful day. And yeah, see you next time.